The snow fell in silent sheets outside the hospital windows, blanketing the world in white as I finished my 12-hour shift. My scrubs clung to my body, still damp with sweat despite the December chill. 3 cardiac arrests, 1 successful. The weight of the 2 we'd lost hung on my shoulders as I trudged toward the staff locker room. "Emma, you look dead on your feet." Nurse Martinez glanced up from her charting. "Go home before you collapse." I managed a weak smile. "Just need to change and I'm out of here." My fingers trembled slightly as I dialed the combination to my locker. Exhaustion. Just exhaustion, I told myself, ignoring the gnawing hunger that had become my constant companion these past months. The meager hospital salary barely covered rent and student loans, leaving little for luxuries like properly stocked groceries or heating that actually worked. The mirror inside my locker door reflected a stranger, hollow-cheeked, dark circles beneath once bright blue eyes, blonde hair pulled back in a messy bun. 27 and I looked 40. I changed quickly, exchanging scrubs for worn jeans and layers of sweaters. My apartment would be freezing tonight. Outside, the hospital's employee exit spilled into the service area where ambulances occasionally idled. Tonight, the space was occupied by something entirely different. A gleaming black Bentley, its windows tinted to impenetrable darkness, engine purring with quiet power. I almost walked past it, assuming it must be waiting for someone important. No one I knew drove anything more luxurious than a 10-year-old Honda. The rear door swung open as I approached. "Miss Matthews?" The driver's voice cut through the snowfall, deep and formal. He wore a black suit despite the hour and weather, standing rigid beside the open door. Behind him, I caught glimpses of another man, larger, scanning the perimeter with practiced efficiency. I stopped, clutching my bag closer to my body. "I'm sorry. You must be mistaken. Emma Matthews, night shift nurse, cardiac unit." His tone conveyed certainty, not question. A chill that had nothing to do with the snow slithered down my spine. "How do you know my name?" "My employer wishes to speak with you. It concerns your father." "My father." The words hit like a physical blow. Daniel Matthews had disappeared 3 years ago, leaving behind nothing but debts, broken promises, and a daughter struggling to finish nursing school while working double shifts. The police investigation had gone nowhere. Eventually, I'd stopped hoping for answers. "What about him?" I asked, my voice suddenly hoarse. "Please." The driver gestured to the open door. "Mr. Castillo prefers not to keep his matters waiting." Castillo. The name registered faintly, whispers in hospital corridors when certain patients arrived with mysterious gunshot wounds and no questions were asked. Rumors of businesses throughout the city that operated under his protection. A name spoken with equal parts fear and reverence. I should have walked away. Every instinct screamed danger. But 3 years of unanswered questions held me in place. 5 minutes, I said, that's all. The interior of the car enveloped me in warm leather and the subtle scent of expensive cologne. Across from me sat a man who couldn't have been more than 35, though power radiated from him in waves that made age irrelevant. Alexei Castillo defied the image my mind had conjured of an aging crime lord. He was devastatingly handsome. Olive skin, sharp cheekbones, and eyes so dark they appeared black in the dim light. His suit probably cost more than 6 months of my salary, tailored perfectly to broad shoulders. "Miss Matthews." His voice carried the barest hint of an accent I couldn't place. "Thank you for joining me." "You mentioned my father," I said, skipping pleasantries. "Do you know where he is?" Something flickered across Castillo's expression. Amusement, perhaps, or appreciation for my directness. "I know exactly where your father is." He reached for a crystal decanter, pouring amber liquid into 2 glasses. "Drink?" I shook my head. "Just information, please." He set 1 glass aside, sipping from the other. "Your father worked for me. Not directly, of course, several layers of separation, but ultimately, he was handling certain financial matters under my supervision." The car began moving, tires crunching softly on snow. I tensed, looking out the window. I didn't agree to go anywhere, just to drive while we talk. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "The hospital parking lot lacks discretion." "What do you mean, he worked for you?" "My father was an accountant at Peterson Financial." A convenient front. Your father had talents that were wasted on legitimate tax preparation. Castillo studied me with unsettling intensity. 3 years ago, he made a decision that disappointed me greatly. He redirected funds that weren't his to redirect. My throat tightened. Are you saying he stole from you? I'm saying he betrayed my trust. Castillo's voice remained soft, which somehow made his words more threatening. And in my world, Miss Matthews, betrayal has consequences. The implications settled over me like ice. Did you kill him? The question hung between us, filling the car's luxurious interior with sudden tension. Castillo didn't answer immediately. Taking another measured sip of his drink. Your father is alive, he finally said. Currently enjoying an extended stay at a property I maintain in South America. The climate is significantly more pleasant than this. He gestured to the snowfall outside. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by suspicion. If this is true, why tell me now? It's been 3 years. Castillo leaned forward slightly, closing some of the distance between us. Because it's time for your father's debt to be settled, and you're going to help make that happen. I don't have money, I said automatically. I can barely make rent. A laugh escaped him. Genuine, warm, entirely at odds with the situation. If I wanted money, Miss Matthews, I wouldn't be speaking with a hospital nurse who buys her clothes at Target. His eyes flicked over my worn sweater, missing nothing. No. What I require is something only you can provide. My heart hammered against my ribs. The car had entered an area of the city I didn't recognize. Old industrial buildings converted to high-end lofts, streets emptier and cleaner than my neighborhood. What exactly do you want from me? I asked, hating the tremor in my voice. Something quite simple. Castillo reached into his suit jacket and removed a small velvet box. When he opened it, a diamond ring caught the passing streetlights, scattering prisms across the car's interior. The stone was enormous, obscene in its opulence. I need a wife, Miss Matthews, temporarily. I stared at the ring, then at him, certain I'd misheard. Excuse me? A marriage. Purely for appearances, I assure you. His expression remained unreadable. I have certain business interests that would benefit greatly from the appearance of domestic stability. A 6-month arrangement, after which you'll be generously compensated and free to resume your life. Your father's debt will be considered paid in full, and he'll be free to return to the country. Though I'd suggest he settle somewhere other than Chicago. You can't be serious. I'm rarely anything but. Castillo closed the ring box with a soft snap. You'd want for nothing during our arrangement. Your financial worries would disappear. Think of it as a 6-month vacation from your current circumstances. The car slowed, pulling up alongside a renovated warehouse turned luxury apartment building. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, I glimpsed an elegant lobby with marble floors and a uniformed doorman. This is one of my properties, Castillo explained. You'd have the penthouse to yourself until the wedding. Security, privacy, every comfort. And if I refuse? His expression didn't change, but the temperature in the car seemed to drop several degrees. Then our conversation about your father takes a different direction, a threat, veiled but unmistakable. My father might be a thief who'd abandoned me, but he was still my father, the only family I had left after Mom died. Why me? I asked. You could have anyone. Precisely the problem. Castillo's eyes held mine. The women in my social circle have agendas, entanglements. You're unattached. No complications. No existing connections to my world. Perfect for what I need. And what happens after these 6 months? You'll just let me go? You'll leave after the wedding serves its purpose, he confirmed. With enough money to start a new life anywhere you choose. My word on that. I didn't trust his word, not for a second. But what choice did I have? My father's life hung in the balance, and something told me Alexei Castillo wasn't a man accustomed to hearing no. I need to think, I said, of course. He handed me a business card, simple, black, with only a phone number embossed in silver. You have until tomorrow evening to decide. The driver opened my door. We had somehow circled back to the hospital, snow still falling gently around us. One more thing, Miss Matthews. Castillo's voice stopped me as I was about to step out. This conversation remains between us. Involving authorities would have Immediate repercussions. For your father, primarily. I nodded stiffly, stepping back into the cold night air. The Bentley pulled away silently, disappearing into the swirling snow like a phantom. My apartment felt smaller and shabbier than ever when I finally reached it an hour later. Water stains marked the ceiling, and the radiator clanked pathetically while producing minimal heat. I sat on my threadbare couch, still wearing my coat, turning Castillo's card over and over in my fingers. A temporary marriage to a man who radiated danger from every pore. A man who held my father hostage in another country. A man whose business dealings I could only imagine. Sleep eluded me entirely. By morning, exhaustion and practicality had made my decision. What was 6 months of my life compared to my father's freedom, compared to the crushing weight of poverty that had become my daily reality? I called the number at precisely 8 a.m. "I'll do it," I said when Castillo answered, his voice recognizable immediately. "But I have conditions." A pause then. "I'm listening." "I finish my shift rotation at the hospital. 2 more weeks. I won't leave them short-staffed." "Admirable, if inconvenient. Continue. I want proof my father is alive, and I want to speak with him. Arrangements can be made for a phone call. Video would be complicated, given his location." I took a deep breath. "And when this is over, I want your guarantee that neither of us will ever hear from you again." Another pause. Longer this time. "That can be arranged. Anything else?" "Just one thing." I gripped the phone tighter. "No one gets hurt because of this arrangement. Whatever your business is, I won't be part of anyone getting hurt." Castillo's laugh was soft, almost gentle. "Your moral compass is noted, Miss Matthews. Report to the address where we stopped last night after your shift today. The penthouse will be prepared for you. I have 2 weeks left at... You'll continue working your shifts. The penthouse is merely more suitable for my future wife than your current accommodations. A car will be waiting for you." The line went dead before I could argue. I sat there, phone in hand, wondering what I had just agreed to. 6 months of my life in exchange for my father's freedom and financial security. 6 months pretending to be married to a man who made my skin prickle with equal parts fear, and something else I refused to acknowledge. Just until after the wedding, I whispered to myself, "Then I'll be free." I had no way of knowing then how profoundly wrong I was. No way of understanding that Alexei Castillo had claimed me the moment I stepped into his car, and that men like him never relinquish what they consider theirs. The wedding wasn't an endpoint, it was just the beginning. That night, as promised, a black SUV waited outside the hospital. Different vehicle, same imposing driver. He opened the door without speaking, and I stepped into my new life like a woman walking to the gallows. Back straight, eyes forward, heart pounding with the certainty that I had made a terrible, irreversible mistake. The penthouse was a different universe from the cramped apartment I'd left behind. Sprawling across the entire top floor of the building, it was decorated in a minimalist style that somehow still screamed money. Sleek furniture, dramatic art pieces, and floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of Chicago's skyline. "Your new home, Miss Matthews," said the driver, setting down my embarrassingly small suitcase. "Mr. Castillo had the kitchen stocked. Security is posted in the lobby and private elevator. If you need anything, press 1 on any house phone." I stood in the center of the living room, feeling small and out of place. "When will Mr. Castillo be arriving?" "Mr. Castillo maintains his primary residence elsewhere. He'll visit when his schedule permits." The man moved toward the elevator. "Your bedroom is through the hallway, last door on the right. The closet has been prepared with appropriate attire." Before I could ask what appropriate attire meant, he was gone, leaving me alone in the silent opulence. I ventured down the hallway, past several closed doors, to the bedroom that was apparently mine. The space was larger than my entire apartment, dominated by a king-sized bed with crisp white linens. One wall was entirely glass, with electronic blinds that could be lowered for privacy. The attached bathroom featured a shower large enough for 4 people, and a soaking tub positioned to enjoy the city view. The closet, however, stopped me in my tracks. Calling it a closet was like calling the ocean a puddle. It was a full-sized room with built-in shelving, racks of hanging clothes, and an island in the center displaying jewelry and accessories. Every item still bore tags, designer names I'd only seen in magazines in my size. Dresses, blouses, jeans, shoes, lingerie, enough clothing for 3 women, all apparently mine now. A note lay on the island, handwritten on heavy cardstock. A proper wardrobe for Mrs. Castillo. The hospital uniforms remain yours, but these are for all other occasions. A. The presumption should have angered me. Instead, I felt a hollow sensation in my stomach as the reality of my situation settled in. I was a possession being prepared for display. I ran my fingers over a silk blouse that probably cost more than a month's rent. Tag still attached, pristine and waiting. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from an unknown number. Car will collect you at 8 p.m. Dinner with me. Wear something formal. Alexei. No, please. No question mark. Just a command, issued with the certainty of being obeyed. I showered in the palatial bathroom, wrapping myself in a towel so plush it felt like a cloud. Standing before the closet's overwhelming selection, I eventually chose a simple black dress, the least ostentatious formal option I could find. It fit perfectly, clinging to curves I'd almost forgotten I had after months of stress and irregular meals. At precisely 8 p.m., the elevator chimed. I expected the driver, but instead, Alexei Castillo himself stood in the doorway, impeccable in a charcoal suit. His eyes moved over me with methodical assessment. The dress suits you, he said finally, though we'll need to work on your nutrition. You're too thin. I swallowed the retort that formed automatically. This wasn't a relationship where I could snap back at perceived insults. Thank you for the clothes, I said instead, the words sticking in my throat. Necessity, not generosity, he corrected, gesturing me toward the elevator. You'll be seen with me. Appearances matter. The restaurant was exclusive, the kind of place with no prices on the menu and staff who materialized exactly when needed and disappeared when not. We were seated in a private alcove, partially screened from the main dining area, but with a clear view of the entire restaurant. I noticed Alexei chose a seat that put his back to the wall. You promised me proof about my father, I said, once the waiter had taken our order, or rather, after Alexei had ordered for both of us without consultation. Direct, as always. He reached into his jacket pocket and removed a folded newspaper. Today's edition of El Tiempo, Colombia's national paper. Next came a photograph showing my father, thinner, tanner, but unmistakably alive, holding the newspaper on what appeared to be a veranda overlooking lush mountains. He's in Colombia? I asked, studying the image for any signs of distress or manipulation, a property outside Medellin. Quite comfortable, though restricted. Alexei retrieved the photo and newspaper. You'll speak with him tomorrow. 10 minutes, not a second more. Thank you. The words came automatically, and I immediately hated myself for expressing gratitude to the man holding my father captive. A slight smile curved his lips. You're learning. Learning what? The appropriate dynamics of our arrangement. His dark eyes held mine. Tell me about yourself, Emma Matthews. Beyond what my background check revealed. What did your background check reveal? I countered. Everything that exists on paper. Born in Evanston to Daniel and Sarah Matthews. Mother died of breast cancer when you were 16. Accelerated your way through nursing school with excellent grades despite working part-time. Currently specializing in cardiac care with a spotless professional record. No serious relationships in the past 2 years. No criminal history. Struggling financially due to student loans and your father's abandoned debts. He sipped his wine. But paper doesn't capture essence. Our food arrived. Perfectly seared scallops for me. Steak for him. I pushed the food around my plate, appetite diminished by his clinical recitation of my life. There's not much more to tell, I said finally. I work. I sleep. I work again. No hobbies? Passions? Dreams beyond hospital corridors? The question caught me off guard. I'd buried such thoughts so deeply beneath survival needs that they felt like luxuries belonging to someone else. I used to paint, I admitted. Watercolors mostly. Landscapes. Something flickered in his expression. Interest, perhaps. When did you stop? When 3 jobs and nursing school consumed every hour. I took a small bite of scallop, the delicate flavor barely registering. Why the interest in my hobbies? They're hardly relevant to our arrangement. Everything about you is relevant. He cut his steak with precise movements. You'll be living in my world. interacting with my associates. The more I understand you, the better I can predict your behavior. I'm not that complicated. I agreed to your terms. I'll play the part. Playing a part requires understanding the script, which brings me to our immediate future. He set down his knife and fork. The wedding takes place in 3 weeks. Small ceremony, selected guests only. Before that, we have the engagement party to attend. People need to believe this union is genuine. 3 weeks? I nearly choked on my wine. That's necessary, he interrupted. The timing is not negotiable. You haven't even told me why you need this marriage in the first place. Alexei studied me for a long moment before answering. I'm acquiring new business interests. The current owners are traditionally minded. They value family stability, continuity. A bachelor with my reputation presents certain concerns, and a hastily married bachelor doesn't. Romance makes people blind to timing. We met 6 months ago. A whirlwind courtship, love at first sight. His mouth curved into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. You were so irresistible that I proposed after just 4 months. No one will believe that. You underestimate both my reputation and human nature. People believe what they wish to believe, especially when the alternative conflicts with their interests. He reached across the table, taking my left hand in his. His skin was warm, the touch startling despite its gentleness. Which reminds me, from his pocket, he produced the same velvet box from our first meeting. This time, he opened it and removed the massive diamond ring before I could protest. With deliberate movements, he slid it onto my finger. The weight of it was immediately noticeable, foreign and heavy. There, now it's official. His thumb brushed over my knuckles, lingering a moment too long. You should know that from this moment, you're under my protection. My security team will accompany you to and from the hospital for your remaining shifts. You don't go anywhere unescorted. That's not necessary, I protested. I've managed on my own for years. His expression hardened. It's non-negotiable. You're mine now, at least in the eyes of the world. That makes you both valuable and vulnerable. The possessive declaration sent an unexpected shiver down my spine. I'm not yours. This is a business arrangement with an expiration date. Semantics. He released my hand and signaled for the check. We should discuss the rules. What rules? The boundaries of our arrangement. His voice lowered, though there was no one near enough to overhear. Rule 1. Absolute discretion. Nothing about the true nature of our relationship leaves your lips. Not to anyone. Rule 2. You follow my security protocols without question. Rule 3. In public, we are convincingly enamored. No one can suspect this is anything but a love match. The server appeared with the check, which Alexei signed without looking at the amount. When we were alone again, I asked, "And what are your obligations in this arrangement?" His eyebrows raised slightly, as if surprised by my audacity. I keep your father alive and eventually free him. I provide for your every material need. I protect you from the less savory elements of my world. He stood, extending his hand to help me up. And I return your freedom after 6 months, as agreed. In the car returning to the penthouse, Alexei sat closer than necessary, his thigh occasionally brushing mine as the vehicle navigated Chicago's streets. I pressed myself against the door, creating distance. You should know, he said, breaking the silence, that I've arranged for you to take a leave of absence from the hospital after your final shift. Medical reasons. Fully paid. Your position will remain secure. You had no right. I had every right. His tone brooked no argument. Once we're married, your continued employment would raise questions. No wife of mine would work hospital shifts for 6 months, I reminded him, after which I returned to my normal life. He didn't respond, staring out at the passing city lights. The silence felt weighted, dangerous. At the penthouse, he walked me to the private elevator. I expected, feared perhaps, that he would insist on coming up, but instead, he simply pressed the button for me. Tomorrow evening, 7 p.m. We're having dinner with business associates. Wear the emerald dress in your closet. As the doors began to close, he added, And Emma? The ring stays on at all times. Alone in the penthouse, I stood before the windows, watching the twinkling city below. The diamond on my finger caught the light, throwing prisms against the glass. I twisted it, feeling its unfamiliar weight, wondering what I'd gotten myself into. My phone rang. Unknown number. Heart racing, I answered. Emma? My father's voice, thinner than I remembered, crackled through the connection. Dad? Tears sprang to my eyes instantly. Are you okay? Are you hurt? I'm fine, sweetheart. They're treating me well enough. He sounded tired, resigned. Emma, listen to me. Whatever Castillo asked you to do, don't do it. Just walk away. It's too late, Dad. I twisted the ring on my finger. I've already agreed. A sharp intake of breath. No, Emma. You don't understand what kind of man he is. I understand enough. You stole from him. Now I'm paying your debt. What did he ask for? The fear in his voice was palpable. I hesitated, then decided truth was simpler. Marriage, temporary, for appearances. Oh, God. My father's voice broke. Emma, nothing is temporary with Alexei Castillo. What he claims, he keeps. He promised I could leave after the wedding serves its purpose, I insisted. But doubt crept in, cold and insidious. Promises mean nothing to men like him. My father's voice lowered urgently. Listen to me. I never stole from him. I discovered something I shouldn't have. Evidence of what he really does, who he really is. That's why he's keeping me here. Before I could respond, the line went dead. I redialed frantically, but a mechanical voice informed me the number was no longer in service. I sank to the floor, back against the cold window glass, the city lights blurring through my tears. My father's warning echoed in my mind, competing with Alexei's smooth assurances. I looked again at the ring on my finger. Not just jewelry now, but a shackle binding me to a man whose true nature I was only beginning to comprehend. Outside, snow began falling again, soft flakes swirling past the windows like silent witnesses to the bargain I had struck. In 3 weeks, I would become Mrs. Castillo in name. But something in Alexei's eyes when he'd slid the ring onto my finger suggested he had no intention of ever letting me go, regardless of what he had promised. 6 months. I just had to survive 6 months. Then freedom, for both my father and myself. At least, that's what I desperately needed to believe. The emerald dress hung on my body like liquid, the color vivid against my pale skin. 3 weeks had passed in a whirlwind of carefully orchestrated appearances, each designed to establish our fictional romance as truth. Tonight was the engagement party, the final public performance before the wedding itself. I barely recognized myself in the mirror. Regular meals in the penthouse had filled out the hollows in my cheeks. The constant presence of Alexei's personal stylist had transformed my previously neglected hair into a glossy curtain that fell past my shoulders. The woman staring back at me looked polished, expensive, and completely foreign. Perfect, came Alexei's voice from the doorway. He leaned against the frame, watching me with that intensity that still made my skin prickle after weeks in his company. You look like you were born for this life. Appearances can be deceiving, I replied, fastening a pair of diamond earrings, another addition to the growing collection of jewelry he'd provided. Isn't that the point of all this? He crossed the room, stopping behind me. Our eyes met in the mirror's reflection. Sometimes, what begins as deception becomes truth. His hand settled on my shoulders, warm and heavy. Are you ready? The guests will be arriving soon, I nodded, unable to form words with him so close. Over the past weeks, Alexei had maintained a careful physical distance, never crossing lines that would make our arrangement more complicated than it already was. But there were moments, like now, when something shifted in his eyes, something possessive and hungry that made my heart race with equal parts fear, and something I refused to name. The engagement party was being held in the penthouse's expansive living area, transformed by an army of event planners into an elegant reception space. Flowers arranged in dramatic displays, champagne flowing freely, catering staff moving discreetly among the gathering crowd. Remember, Alexei murmured as we prepared to greet the first guests. These people aren't just social acquaintances. Every person here has significance to my business interests. Every conversation has purpose. I know my role, I assured him. The script had been drilled into me over countless dinners and outings. Adoring fiancé, captivated by Alexei's charm and generosity. blissfully ignorant of the darker aspects of his empire. The elevator delivered the first wave of guests. Men in expensive suits accompanied by women dripping in jewels that made my borrowed diamonds seem modest in comparison. I plastered on a smile and took my position beside Alexei, his hand resting possessively at the small of my back. "Alexei, you sly devil," boomed a silver-haired man with a Russian accent. "When you said you'd found a bride, we thought perhaps you'd finally lost your mind. Now I see you've lost your heart instead." His appreciative gaze lingered on me a moment too long. "Victor." Alexei's voice carried warmth that didn't reach his eyes. "May I present my fiancée, Emma Matthews. Emma, Victor Petrov is an old family friend." I extended my hand, which Victor kissed rather than shook. "The pleasure is entirely mine," he said, still holding my fingers. "Our Alexei has always been so selective. You must be extraordinary to have captured him so completely." Alexei's hand tightened almost imperceptibly at my waist. "Emma is unique in every way," he said, smoothly extracting my hand from Victor's grasp. "She works miracles with cardiac patients, saving lives while stealing mine." The practiced line rolled off his tongue with convincing sincerity. I looked up at him with what I hoped appeared as adoration, rather than the complex tangle of emotions that actually churned within me. "You give me too much credit, darling." Victor's wife, at least 30 years his junior, appeared at his elbow, her smile tight and assessing. "How did you two meet?" she asked, the question innocent enough, but her tone suggesting she was looking for inconsistencies. "Through mutual acquaintances," Alexei answered smoothly. "At a hospital charity gala last fall." The lie was well rehearsed, complete with fabricated details we'd gone over repeatedly. I nodded, adding the personal touch we'd agreed upon. He donated an obscene amount of money just to speak with me for 5 minutes. "Worth every penny," Alexei said, bringing my hand to his lips in a gesture that sent an unexpected warmth through my body. As more guests arrived, I found myself separated from Alexei, drawn into conversations with curious women eager to discover how an ordinary nurse had captured Chicago's most eligible and feared bachelor. "It all happened so quickly," commented a sleek blonde whose name I'd already forgotten. "Alexei has never shown interest in settling down before." "When you know," I replied, with the breezy confidence of a woman secure in her relationship rather than one participating in an elaborate charade. "And you're not intimidated by his world?" asked another woman, this one older, with knowing eyes that missed nothing. "What aspect of his world do you mean?" I countered, careful to maintain the fiction that I knew only of Alexei's legitimate business ventures. She smiled thinly. "The power, the responsibilities, the expectations that come with being Mrs. Castillo." Before I could formulate a response, a warm arm slipped around my waist. "I hope you ladies aren't interrogating my fiancé too severely," Alexei said, his tone light, but with an undercurrent of warning. "Just girl talk," said the older woman, raising her champagne glass in a silent toast. "She's delightful, Alexei, a refreshing change from your usual companions. She's nothing like anyone who came before," he agreed, his eyes finding mine with an intensity that made the room seem to fade around us. For a moment, the performance felt dangerously close to reality. The evening progressed in a blur of introductions and carefully navigated conversations. I sipped champagne sparingly, aware of the need to maintain absolute control. Throughout it all, Alexei remained attuned to my location, even when across the room, his gaze finding me periodically as if to assure himself of my presence. It was during a rare moment alone, as I slipped into the kitchen for a brief respite from the performance, that I encountered a face I hadn't been introduced to. A man with cold blue eyes, and an air of danger different from but equal to Alexei's. "So you're the bride," he said, leaning against the counter as staff moved around us. "Interesting choice." "I'm sorry, I don't think we've met," I replied, immediately on guard. "Marco Vega." He didn't offer his hand. "Alexei and I have overlapping interests." "I see. Are you a business associate?" Marco's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Sometimes competitor, sometimes collaborator, always watching." His gaze traveled over me with clinical assessment. "You're not what I expected." What did you expect? Someone more aware of what she's walking into. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Alexei doesn't do temporary, sweetheart. Whatever he told you about this arrangement, I guarantee there's more to it. My heart stuttered. I don't know what you're talking about. No? Marco's eyes narrowed. Your father's situation in Colombia is precarious. Did Alexei mention that the property where he's staying belongs to me, not him? That your daddy's continued comfort depends entirely on my goodwill? The blood drained from my face. What do you want? Smart girl, cutting to the chase. Marco glanced toward the doorway. I want you to remember that Alexei Castillo isn't the only power player in this game. When the time comes, and it will, remember who really holds your father's leash. Before I could respond, a shadow fell across the doorway. Alexei stood there, his expression pleasant but his eyes murderous as they fixed on Marco. Vega, he said, voice deceptively soft. I don't recall seeing your name on the guest list. Marco straightened, smiling easily. I was in the neighborhood. Thought I'd congratulate the happy couple personally. He nodded to me. Your fiancé is charming, Castillo. Hold tight to this one. The tension between the men was palpable, crackling in the air like electricity before a storm. Alexei moved to my side, his arm around me possessive, territorial. Emma, he said, not taking his eyes off Marco. Would you mind checking on the caterers about the dessert service? I need a moment with Mr. Vega. It wasn't a request. I slipped from his grasp, heart pounding as I left the kitchen. Instead of finding the caterers, I pressed myself against the wall just outside the door, straining to hear their conversation. Stay away from her. Alexei's voice had lost all pretense of civility. Touchy, aren't we? Marco's tone was amused. I'm just curious about the woman who finally tamed the notorious Alexei Castillo, especially when she appeared so suddenly, right when you need to present a stable image to the Colombians. My personal life is not your concern. It is when it intersects with my business interests. Does she know what you're really using her for? Does she know about Bogota? A sound of movement, something hitting the counter hard. Alexei's voice, lower now, threatening. Mention Bogota again, and our arrangement regarding her father ends permanently. Are we clear? Marco laughed softly. Crystal clear. But remember, Alexei, I've known you too long to believe this marriage is just about business optics. You don't share your space, yet she's living in your penthouse. You don't tolerate attachments, yet you're parading her around like a prize. Whatever game you're playing, I don't think even you understand the rules anymore. I backed away quickly as footsteps approached the door, busying myself with a passing server just as the men emerged. Marco nodded to me with a knowing smile before departing. Alexei's face was a mask of controlled fury as he returned to my side. What did he say to you? He demanded quietly. Nothing important. I lied. Just introducing himself. Alexei's eyes searched mine, clearly not believing me, but unwilling to press the issue with guests nearby. Stay away from him, Emma. Marco Vega is dangerous in ways you can't imagine. More dangerous than marrying a man like you. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Instead of anger, something like appreciation flickered in his expression. At least with me, you know the terms of the danger. His fingers intertwined with mine, the gesture possessive. 2 more hours, then our guests will leave. You're doing exceptionally well. The remainder of the evening passed in a haze of forced smiles and champagne. By the time the last guest departed, my face ached from maintaining the facade. I kicked off my heels the moment the elevator doors closed behind Victor and his wife, the last to leave. Finally, I breathed, sinking onto the sofa and massaging my feet. Alexei loosened his tie, watching me with an unreadable expression. You impressed them, even Victor's wife, and she despises everyone. Good. One performance closer to the end of our arrangement. I reached for the ring, intending to remove it now that no one was watching. Leave it on, Alexei said sharply. There's no one here to see. I'm here. He poured himself a drink from the bar, and it stays on until our agreement concludes. I sighed, too tired to argue. Fine. What was that with Marco Vega, and what's in Bogota that I should know about? Alexei stilled, glass halfway to his lips. You were eavesdropping. I was protecting my interests. If my father's situation is more complicated than you've led me to believe, your father is fine as long as you fulfill your end of our bargain." He set down his glass with controlled precision. Marco was attempting to create discord. It's what he does. Was he lying about owning the property where my father is staying? A muscle ticked in Alexei's jaw. "No, our business arrangements are complex. But your father's situation remains under my control. And Bogota is none of your concern." His tone left no room for argument. "You agreed to play a role, Emma, not to become involved in my business affairs." I stood, suddenly angry. "I agreed to a temporary marriage to save my father. If there's more to this arrangement than you've disclosed, I deserve to know." Alexei crossed the room in 3 long strides, stopping inches from me. This close, I could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from his body. "There are aspects of my world you're safer not knowing," he said, voice dangerously soft. "Trust that I'm protecting you by keeping certain information compartmentalized." "Trust?" I laughed bitterly. "You're holding my father hostage. You've forced me into a fake engagement. Trust isn't exactly the foundation of our relationship." Something flickered in his dark eyes. Hurt, perhaps, quickly masked by iron control. "The wedding is in 5 days. After that, the most difficult part of our charade will be complete." His hand rose, fingers brushing a strand of hair from my face with unexpected gentleness. "You should rest. Tomorrow we have the final fitting for your dress." The sudden shift in his demeanor left me off balance. "Alexei," I said, holding my ground despite his proximity. "Whatever game you and Marco Vega are playing, don't make my father a pawn in it. Your father made himself a pawn the moment he accessed files he had no business seeing." Alexei's fingers trailed down my cheek, coming to rest beneath my chin. "But you're no pawn, Emma Matthews. Never make the mistake of thinking you are." Before I could process his words, he leaned down and pressed his lips to mine. Our first kiss, brief but deliberate, sending an electric current through my body that left me frozen in shock. "Get some sleep," he murmured, stepping back. "The staff will clean up in the morning." He turned and walked toward the elevator, leaving me standing in the middle of the empty party, fingers pressed to lips that still tingled from his touch, mind racing with questions I was increasingly afraid to have answered. As the elevator doors closed behind him, I sank back onto the sofa, surrounded by the remnants of our fraudulent celebration. 5 days until the wedding, 5 days until I officially became Mrs. Castillo. And despite all evidence suggesting I should run as far and fast as possible, some traitorous part of me wondered what it would be like if this weren't all an elaborate performance. If the possessive gleam in Alexei's eyes when he looked at me were genuine. If that kiss had been born of desire rather than calculation. Dangerous thoughts. Especially since Marco Vega's warning continued to echo in my mind. Alexei doesn't do temporary. The diamond on my finger caught the light, winking at me like it knew secrets I had yet to discover. Secrets that might prove Marco right. That once Alexei Castillo claimed something, he never let it go. The morning of my wedding dawned crisp and clear, sunlight spilling through the penthouse windows in golden ribbons that belied the turmoil inside me. 5 weeks ago, I had been a nurse struggling to pay rent. Today, I would become the wife of one of Chicago's most feared men. "Arms up," instructed the stylist, lifting the custom wedding gown over my head. The silk settled against my skin like water, cool and fluid. 2 assistants immediately began fastening the long row of tiny pearl buttons that ran down my spine. I hadn't seen Alexei in 2 days. A traditional separation before the wedding, he'd explained, though I suspected it had more to do with business than tradition. The last time we'd spoken had been during the rehearsal dinner, where he'd played the role of besotted groom with such conviction that even I had moments of forgetting it was all performance. "You look stunning," said Sophia, Alexei's personal assistant who had been assigned to oversee my preparation. Her usual crisp efficiency was tempered by genuine admiration as she circled me. "Mr. Castillo will be breathless." I doubted anything could render Alexei Castillo breathless, but I kept the thought to myself. "What time is it?" I asked instead. "Nearly 11. The ceremony begins at 1. Sophia checked her phone. "The car arrives in 40 minutes. Hair and makeup are almost complete. Then we'll add the veil and jewelry." The wedding was taking place at a private estate outside the city. exclusive, heavily secured, and far from prying eyes or uninvited guests. Only 60 people would witness the ceremony, each carefully vetted and significant to Alexei's business interests. As the makeup artist applied the finishing touches, I studied my reflection. The woman in the mirror was a stranger, ethereal in ivory silk that hugged her curves before flaring gracefully at the knees, hair swept into an elegant updo with loose tendrils framing her face. Diamond drops hung from her ears, matching the massive engagement ring and the delicate bracelet at her wrist. She looked like she belonged in Alexei's world of wealth and power. "One final touch," Sophia said, producing a velvet box. Inside lay a necklace of diamonds and sapphires that caught the light in blue fire. "Mr. Castillo sent this for you, a wedding gift." The piece was exquisite, vintage by the look of the setting, and worth more than I would have earned in 10 years at the hospital. Sophia fastened it around my neck, the weight of it substantial against my collarbone. "There was a note," she added, handing me a small envelope. Inside, written in Alexei's bold handwriting, something borrowed from my mother's collection. "Something blue to match the fire in your eyes when you defy me, A." My fingers trembled slightly as I refolded the note. The gift was too personal, too thoughtful for our arrangement. Like the kiss after the engagement party, it blurred lines that needed to remain clear. The ride to the estate passed in silence, the privacy screen up between me and the driver. Sophia had gone ahead to ensure everything was prepared. I watched the city give way to countryside, mentally rehearsing the vows I would recite. Words of love and devotion that were elaborate lies. The estate was a sprawling mansion set amid manicured grounds, now transformed with white flowers and ribbons into a fairy tale wedding venue. Security personnel in suits that barely concealed their weapons patrolled discreetly. As my car pulled into the circular drive, I spotted several men I recognized as part of Alexei's inner circle, stationed at strategic points around the property. Sophia met me at the entrance, ushering me through a side door to avoid early glimpses from arriving guests. "Everything is perfect," she assured me, leading me to a luxurious suite that had been converted into a bridal preparation room. "Mr. Castillo has arrived and is greeting select guests. The ceremony area is ready." My stomach knotted with nervous energy. "Sophia, I need a moment alone." She hesitated, then nodded. 10 minutes. Then we need to be in position. When the door closed behind her, I sank onto a velvet chaise, careful not to wrinkle the gown. The room's window overlooked the ceremony area, white chairs arranged in neat rows, an arbor dripping with flowers, string quartet setting up beside a small reflecting pool. It was beautiful, tasteful, and entirely surreal. My phone, a new secured device Alexei had provided, buzzed with a message. "Unknown number. They're moving your father. Tonight. Whatever Castillo promised, it's happening now. Be prepared. Marco Vega." It had to be. I tried calling the number back, but it had already been disconnected. Before I could process the implications, a soft knock came at the door. "Emma?" Sophia's voice. "It's time." The ceremony was a blur, faces turning as I walked down the aisle alone. No father to give me away, a detail that felt cruelly ironic. Alexei waiting at the arbor looking devastating in a black tuxedo, his expression softening in apparent wonder as I approached. For something arranged purely for appearances, no detail had been overlooked. The vows we exchanged were personalized. Romantic without being maudlin, Alexei's hands remained steady as he slid the platinum band onto my finger, while mine trembled slightly as I performed the same action. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, Alexei's kiss was gentle but possessive, lingering just enough to elicit approving murmurs from the assembled guests. "You're trembling," he whispered against my ear as we turned to face our audience as husband and wife. "Good acting," I whispered back, forcing a radiant smile. His arm tightened around my waist. "You're magnificent," he said. And for a disorienting moment, I couldn't tell if he was still performing or expressing genuine admiration. The reception that followed was lavish but intimate. A 5-course meal served in the estate's grand ballroom, followed by dancing under crystal chandeliers. Alexei remained at my side throughout, his hand often at the small of my back, possessive and guiding. To anyone watching, We appeared deeply in love, exchanging glances, laughing at private jokes, moving together as if we'd been partners for years, rather than reluctant collaborators for weeks. "You should eat something," Alexei murmured during a moment between conversations. "You've barely touched your plate." "I'm not hungry," I replied, eyes scanning the room for any sign of Marco Vega among the guests. He wasn't there, either not invited or deliberately keeping his distance. "What's wrong?" Alexei's perception was unnervingly acute. "Something's changed since this morning." I met his gaze, searching for deception. "They're moving my father tonight." His expression remained carefully neutral, but a muscle ticked in his jaw. "Who told you that? Does it matter? Is it true?" Alexei glanced around, ensuring no one was within earshot. "Yes. It was always the plan. Once the wedding was complete, your father would be relocated to ensure his safety during the next phase." "Next phase?" My fingers tightened around my champagne flute. "What next phase? Our agreement was that he would be released after the wedding. And he will be. But these things require careful timing and coordination." Alexei's hand covered mine, ostensibly affectionate but effectively stopping me from causing a scene. "This isn't the place for this conversation, Emma." "When is the place? You've been evading my questions for weeks." I kept my voice low, but couldn't hide the anger. "I fulfilled my part of the bargain. I married you. Now I want my father free." Alexei's dark eyes held mine, something unreadable shifting in their depths. "And you'll have what you want. But there are complications that have arisen. Vega's interference being one of them. What does Marco Vega have to do with my father?" "Later," Alexei said firmly, as Viktor Petrov approached our table. "For now, be my wife." The rest of the reception passed in a haze of forced smiles and mechanical responses. I danced with Alexei, my body going through the motions while my mind raced with possibilities. If my father was being moved tonight, it created both risk and opportunity. Whatever Alexei's next phase entailed, I needed to ensure my father's safety before things became even more complicated. As the evening progressed, I noticed Alexei engaged in what appeared to be tense conversations with several men I didn't recognize. Conversations that took place in corners, behind pleasant smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Business, conducted between champagne toasts at his own wedding. It was after midnight when we finally bid farewell to the last guests. The staff had begun dismantling decorations, and the security team was conducting final sweeps of the property. Alexei's hand remained possessively at my waist as we climbed the grand staircase to the suite where we would supposedly spend our wedding night. "Your things have been moved to the master bedroom," he said as he unlocked the door. "We'll stay here tonight, then fly to the Cayman Islands in the morning for a brief honeymoon." "Honeymoon?" I stepped away from him once the door closed behind us. "That wasn't part of our agreement. Appearances, Emma. Newlyweds take honeymoons." He removed his tie with efficient movements. "It's only for 3 days. Then we return to Chicago and settle into married life." I stared at him, finally giving voice to the question that had been building for weeks. "What happens after the 6 months, Alexei? Really?" He paused, studying me with those unfathomable dark eyes. "You're free to go, as agreed. Your father will be established with a new identity in a location of his choosing, with sufficient funds to start over. You'll receive the compensation promised. And divorce? When the time is right." He resumed undressing, removing his jacket and cufflinks with methodical precision. "For now, we have more pressing concerns. Your father is indeed being moved tonight. Marco Vega has been trying to leverage his position to gain advantage. I need to ensure the transfer happens according to my terms, not his." I sank onto the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. "I don't understand any of this. What does Marco want? What do you want? Why is my father so important?" Alexei was silent for a long moment, as if weighing how much to reveal. Finally, he sat beside me, careful to maintain a small distance between us. "Your father discovered evidence of money laundering through seemingly legitimate businesses, operations that implicated not only me but several international partners, including Marco Vega. But what he found went deeper than financial crimes. There were records of other activities, things that would interest federal authorities on multiple continents. So he is a hostage to your criminal empire." I laughed bitterly. At least be honest about that much. He's alive because of me, Alexei countered, voice hardening. Others wanted him eliminated immediately. I argued for containment instead, and then used him to force me into this arrangement. I gestured at my wedding dress, still immaculate despite the long day. What was so important about marrying me? The business story is wearing thin, Alexei. No one needs a wife this badly for business optics. His eyes locked with mine, intensity radiating from him in almost palpable waves. The first time I saw you, really saw you, not just a photograph in a file, was 6 months ago. You were leaving the hospital after a double shift. It was raining. You gave your umbrella to an elderly patient who was waiting for transport. The memory surfaced hazily, a rainy evening. An old man with trembling hands. My impulse to ensure he stayed dry while waiting for his ride. You were watching me. I was there regarding another matter. But I noticed you. Your compassion. Your quiet dignity despite obvious exhaustion. I had you investigated out of curiosity. Discovered your connection to Daniel Matthews. It seemed fortuitous. Fortuitous? Anger flared hot in my chest. You've been manipulating my life for 6 months? I've been protecting you, he corrected. Your father's activities put both of you in danger. Marco Vega and others would have eliminated both of you to tie up loose ends. I prevented that. By keeping him prisoner and forcing me to marry you. I stood, needing distance from him. That's not protection, Alexei. That's control. Yes. The simple admission caught me off guard. I wanted you. The situation with your father provided leverage. I'm not a good man, Emma. I don't pretend to be. The confession hung in the air between us. I stared at him, trying to reconcile the calculated manipulation with the man who had looked at me with genuine wonder as I walked down the aisle, who had noticed me giving away an umbrella in the rain 6 months ago. What happens now? I finally asked. Tonight, with my father. Now, we maintain appearances. Alexei stood, approaching me with measured steps. We're newlyweds. The estate staff expects us to retire for the night together. Meanwhile, my most trusted men are overseeing your father's relocation from Colombia to a secure location in Panama. And tomorrow? Tomorrow we fly to the Caymans as planned. 3 days there, maintaining our cover while things settle, then back to Chicago. I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping me. And I'm just supposed to trust you? After learning you've been manipulating me for months? Alexei reached out slowly, his fingers brushing my cheek in a gesture so gentle it made my breath catch. Trust that I want you safe. Trust that I will keep my word regarding your father's freedom. His thumb traced my lower lip. The rest is more complicated. The air between us seemed to charge with electricity. Despite everything, the lies, the manipulation, the danger, my traitorous body responded to his proximity, to the intensity in his gaze. I need to change, I said abruptly, stepping away from his touch. This dress weighs a ton. Alexei nodded, allowing me the escape. The bathroom is through there. Your things are in the closet. I'll give you privacy. In the massive marble bathroom, I stared at my reflection. Still the stranger in white silk, diamonds at my throat, but now with the addition of a platinum wedding band beside the engagement ring. Mrs. Castillo. The name felt foreign, dangerous. As I carefully removed the gown, I couldn't escape the reality of my situation. Whatever freedom I thought I'd negotiated had been illusion. Alexei had been orchestrating events long before he approached me outside the hospital. And despite his promise about the 6-month time frame, I was beginning to understand what my father and Marco Vega had both warned me about. Alexei Castillo didn't do temporary. The question remaining was what I would do with that knowledge, and whether the complex feelings developing within me would lead to my salvation or my downfall. 3 months into our marriage, the lines between performance and reality had begun to blur, like watercolors bleeding into one another. Life as Mrs. Castillo settled into a rhythm I never expected. Complex, dangerous, and increasingly difficult to imagine abandoning. The Cayman Islands honeymoon had extended from 3 days to 2 weeks, with Alexei conducting business remotely while I adjusted to my new reality. We shared meals, conversations, and eventually the same bed. though Alexei maintained physical boundaries that both frustrated and relieved me. We returned to Chicago as a united front, presenting the image of newlywed bliss while privately navigating the complicated truth of our arrangement. On this particular evening, I stood at the penthouse windows watching snow blanket the city, almost exactly like the night Alexei had first approached me, though everything else had transformed beyond recognition. My phone chimed with the secure messaging app Alexei had installed. A video call from a number I'd come to recognize over the past months. "Dad," I answered, relief washing through me at the sight of his face. He looked healthier than in previous calls. Tanned, less gaunt. "How are you feeling?" "Better every day." He adjusted the camera, revealing a veranda overlooking a tropical garden. "The doctors here are excellent. Lung capacity improving, they say." The pneumonia had been unexpected, a complication during his transfer from Colombia to Panama. For 3 terrifying weeks, I'd received only sporadic updates on his condition as he fought for his life in a private medical facility. It was during that time that something fundamental had shifted between Alexei and me. "Emma." My father's voice drew me back to the present. "Have you thought about what I said, about leaving while you still can?" I glanced toward the bedroom, making sure Alexei wasn't within earshot. "It's not that simple anymore, Dad." "It never is with men like him." My father's expression darkened. "The longer you stay, the harder it becomes to leave. Trust me, I know. Alexei isn't keeping me prisoner." The words felt both true and false simultaneously. "And he's arranged for your care, your recovery. Because it gives him leverage over you," my father countered. "Emma, listen to me. The documents I found, the reason I'm in this situation, they contained evidence of things you can't imagine. Castillo isn't just some businessman with shady connections. He's—" The call suddenly ended, the screen going black. I tried calling back immediately, but the connection failed repeatedly. With growing unease, I checked the encrypted email account Alexei had set up for communication with my father. Nothing new. "Problem?" Alexei's voice came from behind me, making me jump. He stood in the doorway to our bedroom, casually elegant in a charcoal sweater and tailored slacks, watching me with those perceptive eyes that seemed to miss nothing. "The call with my father cut out," I said, deciding honesty was safer than being caught in a lie. "I can't reconnect." Alexei crossed to the bar, pouring himself a measure of scotch. "The secure connection sometimes experiences delays. Try again tomorrow." Something in his tone raised my suspicions. "Did you terminate the call?" He turned to face me, expression neutral. "Why would I do that?" "Because my father was about to tell me something you don't want me to know." A slight smile curved his lips. "After 3 months as my wife, you still think I'd be so clumsy?" He approached, handing me a glass of wine I hadn't asked for, but accepted anyway. "Your father's connection likely dropped because of the storm system moving through Panama. Nothing more sinister than weather." I wanted to believe him. Part of me, a growing part, did believe him. But doubt lingered, nurtured by my father's persistent warnings and the glimpses I'd caught of Alexei's business operations. "We need to discuss the 6-month timeline," I said, changing tactics. "We're halfway through our agreement." Alexei's expression shifted subtly, a tightening around his eyes. "Is living as my wife so unbearable that you're counting the days?" The question caught me off guard with its hint of vulnerability. "That's not what I meant. I just need clarity." He studied me for a long moment, then set down his glass and crossed to the windows where I stood. Chicago sprawled beneath us, lights twinkling through falling snow like stars captured in a glass dome. "The situation has evolved since our original agreement," he said finally. "Marco Vega's interference, your father's illness, certain business developments, you're extending the timeline. It wasn't a question. I'm suggesting we reassess what both of us want." He turned to me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "These past months, have they been only performance for you, Emma?" My heart accelerated traitorously. "Don't do that," I said, voice low. "Don't pretend this is about feelings when it's about control. Is it impossible that it could be both?" His hand rose to my face, fingers tracing my cheekbone with feather-light precision. "I've watched you these past months. How you've adapted to my world, how you've learned to navigate its complexities, how you look at me when you think I don't notice." I stepped back, needing distance from his intoxicating proximity. Stockholm Syndrome isn't the same as genuine emotion, Alexei. Something like hurt flashed in his eyes before his expression hardened. Then perhaps we should clarify the terms of our continued arrangement. He moved toward his office. Come. There's something you should see. I followed him into the sleek space where he conducted business from home, watchful of the sudden shift in his demeanor. Alexei unlocked a hidden safe behind an abstract painting, removing a laptop I'd never seen before. After entering several passwords, he turned the screen toward me. These are the documents your father accessed, he explained, voice clinically detached. Financial records primarily. Routing of funds through shell corporations across 12 countries. Evidence of tax evasion, certainly, but nothing that justifies his continued insistence about my supposedly monstrous nature. I scanned the spreadsheets and banking information, recognizing my father's organizational style in certain details. This is what he stole from you? Not exactly. He copied these, yes, but what concerned me was his access to other files. Alexei typed another password, opening a folder containing photographs. These. The images showed Alexei with various individuals. Some I recognized from news reports as political figures, others unfamiliar but clearly wealthy and powerful. Nothing overtly criminal, but the context suggested meetings that weren't meant to be documented. Compromising, but hardly worth kidnapping over, I observed. Keep scrolling. Further down were more disturbing images. Marco Vega, with individuals who appeared unconscious or injured. Documentation of what looked like human trafficking operations. Evidence of violence I could barely process. These aren't my operations, Alexei said quietly as I stared in horror. They're Vega's. Your father stumbled onto evidence that Vega had been conducting these activities while using my legitimate business infrastructure as cover, without my knowledge or consent. I looked up from the screen. You expect me to believe you didn't know? I knew he operated in gray areas. I didn't know the extent. Alexei's expression was grim. When your father discovered these connections, Vega wanted him eliminated immediately. I intervened, both to protect your father and to gain leverage against Vega while I dismantled his operations within my territory. So my father wasn't stealing from you. He was gathering evidence against Marco Vega. Yes and no. He was stealing financial data from me, which is how he accidentally discovered Vega's operations. His motives weren't entirely pure. He intended to blackmail me with the tax information. Instead, he stumbled into something far more dangerous. The revelation shifted my understanding of everything that had happened. And our marriage? How does that fit into this? Alexei closed the laptop, securing it before returning it to the safe. Initially, as I told you, business appearances, stability. The Colombians wouldn't partner with someone they perceived as unstable or untrustworthy. He paused, seeming to weigh his next words carefully, but I could have managed that other ways. The truth is, I wanted you. From that first night in the rain, the situation with your father provided opportunity. That's manipulation, not romance, I said. Though without the heat I'd have felt weeks earlier. I never claimed to court you ethically. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I've built an empire through strategic calculation. I applied the same approach to acquiring you. I'm not an acquisition, Alexei. No, he agreed, moving closer. You've become much more than that, which complicates our original arrangement considerably. My pulse quickened as he approached. Over the past months, we'd maintained a careful distance, sharing a bed, but never crossing the line to intimacy, building a relationship based on complex interdependence rather than physical connection. But the air between us had grown increasingly charged, desire building like pressure before a storm. What do you want from me now? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. Everything, he answered simply. Not for 6 months, not as performance. Everything, Emma. Permanently. Before I could respond, his phone rang, the specific tone that indicated his security team. Alexei answered immediately, his expression darkening as he listened. When? He demanded. How many? Lock down the building and bring the car around. We leave in 5 minutes. He ended the call, already moving toward the bedroom. Pack a bag. Essentials only. We need to go, now. What's happening? Alarm shot through me at his sudden urgency. Vega's men have been spotted in the building. Alexei pulled a go-bag from the closet, checking its contents. He's making his move. What move? Against what? Against me. Against us. He grabbed my shoulders, intensity radiating from him. Listen carefully. Marco Vega has been losing territory and influence for months as I've systematically dismantled his operations. The marriage, our marriage, solidified alliances that further weakened his position. He's desperate, which makes him dangerous. Understanding dawned with sickening clarity. My father is secure, Alexei assured me. I moved him to a different facility 2 days ago, precisely because I anticipated Vega might try to use him as leverage. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by renewed fear, as the penthouse security system emitted a soft warning tone. Alexei reacted instantly, pulling me toward a concealed panel in the bedroom wall. Emergency exit, he explained, pressing his palm to a hidden scanner. It leads to a secure elevator that connects to underground parking. As the panel slid open, the main elevator chimed. Someone arriving at the penthouse. Alexei's expression hardened as he drew a gun from beneath his jacket. Go, he ordered, pushing me toward the hidden passage. The elevator is already activated. It will take you to the garage level where Dmitri is waiting. He'll get you to the safe house. I'm not leaving you, I protested. This isn't a debate, Emma. His voice was steel, but his eyes held something I'd never seen before. Fear, not for himself, but for me. Vega won't kill me immediately. He needs information, but he will use you to break me. The main door of the penthouse crashed open, voices and footsteps suddenly filling the space. Alexei pushed me through the hidden doorway, then hesitated. Remember what I said, he murmured, pressing a hard, desperate kiss to my lips. Everything, Emma. That's what I want. When this is over, I want everything. Before I could respond, he closed the panel, sealing me into the narrow passage. Through the wall, I heard shouting, then Alexei's calm voice cutting through the chaos. The hidden elevator arrived silently, doors sliding open to provide escape. I stood frozen, torn between self-preservation and the sudden, overwhelming certainty that I couldn't leave him behind. Not now. Not after everything. The decision crystallized with startling clarity. I wasn't the same woman who had entered Alexei's car that snowy night, desperate and afraid. His world had changed me, hardened me in some ways, awakened me in others. Instead of entering the elevator, I pressed my ear to the wall, straining to hear what was happening in the penthouse. Vega's voice carried through faintly, smug and threatening. Alexei's responses were too low to distinguish, but the tension was palpable even through the barrier. I examined the passage, noticing a service panel near the floor, likely access to electrical or security systems. Kneeling, I pried it open, revealing a tangle of wires and a small control pad. My months living with Alexei hadn't been spent in idle luxury. I'd paid attention, learned the systems and protocols that protected his world. Now that knowledge might save his life. With careful precision, I accessed the security override, triggering the emergency protocols without activating the alarms. Throughout the building, security feeds would switch to backup servers, alerting Alexei's external team without warning those inside. It would take time for them to assemble. Time I needed to buy. The panel revealed another feature, a small monitor showing security camera feeds from the penthouse. I could see Alexei, seemingly relaxed despite being surrounded by 4 armed men, with Marco Vega pacing before him like a predator. "Where is she?" Vega demanded, voice now clear through the monitor's audio. "Where's your pretty nurse?" "Safe," Alexei replied simply. "Beyond your reach." Vega laughed. "Nothing is beyond my reach, certainly not your wife. Did she enjoy the conversations with her father? The ones where I fed him information designed to turn her against you, piece by piece?" My blood ran cold at the revelation. The calls with my father, his escalating warnings, the specific accusations, had been manipulated by Vega. How much of what my father had told me was genuine concern, and how much was Vega's orchestration? "It doesn't matter," Alexei said, seemingly unaffected. "Emma makes her own decisions. And she'll decide to save her father's life, I'm certain. Vega held up his phone. One call, and the medical staff treating him will receive new orders. Unless you give me the access codes to the Colombian accounts. You're assuming her father is still where you left him, Alexei replied, a hint of satisfaction in his tone. A foolish assumption. Vega's expression contorted with rage. He nodded to one of his men, who struck Alexei across the face with his gun. Blood spilled from a cut above his eye, but Alexei remained composed, almost bored. You've made a critical error, Marco, he said, wiping blood from his face with his sleeve. You've entered my home and threatened my wife. There's no scenario where you leave here alive. As if on cue, the lights in the penthouse flickered, the result of my security override triggering the backup systems. Vega's men looked around nervously, but Vega himself remained focused on Alexei. Parlor tricks won't save you, Castillo. Your empire ends tonight. Everything you've built becomes mine, including your wife, if she's foolish enough to return. The monitor showed one of Vega's men approaching, with what appeared to be tools of torture. My heart pounded as I realized I was out of time. The emergency protocol would bring Alexei's team, but not quickly enough, making a decision that would forever alter the course of my life. I opened a small compartment beside the elevator controls, revealing a secondary security panel. This one required Alexei's personal code, a sequence I'd memorized weeks ago when he'd entered it. Believing I wasn't paying attention, the code activated a final safety measure: gas delivery through the penthouse ventilation system. Not lethal, but disabling. I had 20 seconds before it deployed. Moving swiftly, I took the gun from the emergency box beside the elevator, positioned myself at the hidden door's release mechanism, and began counting down. At 0, I heard the soft hiss of gas entering the main room, followed by confused shouts and coughing. I pressed the door release and slipped back into the bedroom, gun raised and a scarf pressed to my nose and mouth. Moving silently through the penthouse, I found chaos in the main room. Vega's men disoriented and struggling to breathe. Alexei already leveraging the confusion to free himself from his captors. Our eyes met across the room. Something passed between us: understanding, partnership, a commitment beyond contracts or coercion. Without hesitation, I fired at the man nearest Alexei, hitting him in the shoulder. Alexei immediately seized the opportunity, disarming another guard and taking control of the situation with brutal efficiency. Within moments, Vega's men were incapacitated. Only Vega himself remained semi-conscious. Staggering toward the elevator, Alexei intercepted him with cold precision, driving him to the floor with a calculated blow. "Emma," Alexei said, breathing heavily but otherwise composed despite the blood on his face. "You should have gone to the safe house." "And leave you to handle this alone?" I kept my gun trained on Vega. "We're partners, aren't we? Isn't that what marriage means?" A smile, genuine, warm, transformed Alexei's face. "Yes," he said simply. "That's exactly what it means." The elevator chimed, delivering Alexei's security team, who quickly took control of the prisoners. As the penthouse filled with his men, Alexei pulled me into the quiet of his office, examining me with urgent concern. "Are you hurt?" His hands moved over me, checking for injuries. "I'm fine." I set the gun down on his desk. "But we need to talk about my father. About Vega's manipulation of our communications." Alexei nodded grimly. "Vega has been feeding him selective information, exploiting his concerns to turn you against me. Some of what he told you was truth, some carefully crafted lies. And where does that leave us?" I asked, the question encompassing far more than just the immediate situation. Alexei took my hands in his gaze intense. "That depends entirely on what you want, Emma. Our original agreement has been complicated by circumstances neither of us anticipated, including feelings neither of us anticipated," I added quietly. His eyes darkened. "Yes." "You said you want everything," I reminded him. "Permanently." "I meant it." His voice was rough with emotion. "But I won't hold you to an arrangement that began with coercion. When this is finished, when Vega is dealt with and your father is secure, you'll have a choice. Stay as my wife, my true partner in every sense, or take your freedom with my blessing." The offer, A genuine choice after months of having none, was perhaps the most sincere declaration of feeling Alexei could make. In his world of power and control, giving me the freedom to choose was his version of love. And my father? Will be free regardless of your decision, Alexei promised. His security is being arranged independently of our situation. New identity, comfortable funds, freedom to go wherever he chooses, with protection that will remain in place whether you stay with me or not. I studied his face, the sharp angles, the dark eyes that had once terrified me, and now held me captive in an entirely different way. When I walked into your car that night, I thought I was making a temporary sacrifice to save my father. I never imagined that you could come to care for a monster. His smile was self-deprecating, that I could find myself in the middle of a war between criminal empires, holding a gun and choosing a side. I corrected. That the side I'd choose would be yours. That somewhere between fear and obligation, I'd find something I wasn't looking for. Understanding dawned in his eyes. And what was that, Emma? A home, I said simply. Complicated, dangerous, but mine all the same. With you, the admission hung between us, changing everything. Alexei's hand came up to cup my face, his touch gentle despite the violence those same hands had enacted minutes earlier. Stay, he whispered. Not for 6 months. Not because of your father. Stay because you want to. Stay because this world we've built between us, imperfect as it is, matters to you as it does to me. In answer, I closed the distance between us, pressing my lips to his in a kiss that contained my decision. The taste of blood mingled with desire as his arms encircled me, pulling me against him with the desperation of a man who had nearly lost everything. When we finally broke apart, breathless, I saw a future unfolding that I'd never imagined for myself. Complex, shadowed, but illuminated by a connection that had transcended its coercive beginnings. We need to move quickly, Alexei said, though his hands remained at my waist. Vega's organization will retaliate once they realize he's been captured. The safe house, then arrangements for your father. And after that? I asked. His eyes held mine, filled with a promise I now believed. After that, we build something real from what began as pretense. Together. 6 months earlier, I had entered Alexei Castillo's car believing I would leave after the wedding, that my captivity had an expiration date, that freedom waited on the other side of a temporary arrangement. I had been wrong. There would be no leaving, no returning to the life I'd known before. But as Alexei led me from the penthouse, his hand firm in mine, his men securing our path, the weight of his ring on my finger no longer feeling like a shackle but a choice, I realized that sometimes captivity and freedom were not opposites, but different faces of the same complex truth. I had entered a cage of Alexei's making, only to discover that I had become its keeper. And in that paradox, I had found a home I never knew I wanted, with a man whose darkness matched and balanced my light. The Mafia boss had never let me go. But somewhere along the way, I had stopped wanting him to,